center of attention. But before I could say a word, my mother casually commented, "That's great, Terry. Did you know that Marcus has been invited to a national math competition?" My heart sank. It was always like that. No matter what
Finally
I did,
up?
Marcus always did something better.
Put you through some real crap, didn't I?
While Marcus had elaborate birthday parties, I received modest, almost forgettable celebrations. He received praise from every soul.
I'm completely fine now. Better than ever, in fact.
Over time, I learned to stop trying.
So,
If they couldn't see,
sorry.
there was no
It was my fault the Sandras ran aground. I can't believe I got so flustered that I'd make such a rookie mistake. Sure, but then I got upset and took it out on you. Oh, right. There was one other thing I should mention. What happened to me yesterday, that wasn't an illness. I think that was me going berserk. On top of wielding mana, he can go berserk whenever he pleases. It's a form of combat that only develops in a select few, turning their heightened emotions into raw power. The user gains monumental strength at the cost of their senses, causing them to fight till their stamina runs dry. That's right. The same power you saw Grimson use as we were fleeing Karnak. Just like with mana, it seems to develop in less and less people as time goes on. Apparently, Grimson uses the henbane herbs he smokes to bring on a berserker state by force. I think Grimson's the only one it works for. That power. During battle, it makes you so exhilarated, as if you're in a trance or overcome with ecstasy. But at the same time, you can feel it threatening to swallow you up. Like if you let it go too far, you'll never come back. But last night, my mom came to me in a dream. I can't help but think that was why my power started calming down. Of course, I'm sure that medicine you gave me had something to do with it too. Ilana Balta was her name. I hear she led the Balta Sea Force along with Grimson, but I don't really remember her all that well. She died when I was 3. When I was in that feverish haze, though, her words came back to me.
Okay, my sweet little Karja. Be a good girl while Mommy's away. I'm always praying for your health and happiness. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that day never comes.
I was wondering that myself. The day I go berserk, or maybe something else entirely for all I know. Hey now, you're making it sound like you're not gonna help out. Still though, I really am glad. Let's go, brother. Back to the Sandras.
And as Hannah's belly grew, so did the anticipation for the birth of our son. We organized the baby's room, chose a name, and dreamed about the future. It was a moment of pure happiness, a complete contrast to the pain I felt when I thought about the years that had passed, the unexpected. Everything was going well until the day I unexpectedly received a visit. She rarely texted me. If she did, there was always something casual, without much real interest in her. But this time was different. The message said, "Very immediate. Please come see us." I hesitated. Partly, why would the message go on in my life without informing me? But something about the way she wrote it. It was just another return to her.
Switch!
Curiosity coming back. Better judgment. Decided to go. I was probably fine on the experience. Other than the
Going somewhere? Going somewhere?
I like to talk about Marcus. Our mother began on a more serious than I have ever heard. Sprout, I discovered what's wrong with serious trouble. That took me by surprise. Marcus, big stuff. I didn't know how to react. I was in silent, explained. A unexpected request. As my parents began to explain, such as he preached his way. Marcus, facing for his son, facing problems. Apparently, he got involved in risky business.
Can't let your guard down with this one.
They were silent. They were open. The weight of our family history seemed to hang over us.
Here I go.
I knew you could do it, Karja!
The conversation with my parents to the frustration that accumulated. She said there was some sensible. You're trying so hard. Never acknowledged it. But I also understand that it's hard to just I knew she was right. I had no obligation to help this, especially after so many years of rejection. But at the same time,
Going somewhere?
despite your faith, it's still made happy.
Going somewhere?
Parents was indescribable. Finally, I have my own family. The environment of love and support that I had never known. What with this joy? Now my parents to be informed by someone, and then we had never really been there. This was part of this new chapter. The answer seemed to all. I didn't even tell you.
I gotta give it my all, Chintzy!
But at the same time, I knew that the weight of the past was not easily dissipated. The unexpected revelation. A few weeks later, I received a joint message from my parents. This time, it was not about Marcus. It was the family inheritance. They explained that, considering I was already old, that Marcus was from, they had decided that the entire inheritance.
Switch! Slice and dice! Earthbringer!
Switch out!
I didn't need their inheritance. I really wanted how the mother kept his toxic relationship with my kids.
Going somewhere?
I decided to find a better way. I didn't want to be like a confrontation. I without them. The letter realized I did everything else needed. I told them about the roots of my childhood, and I have always felt fear. I also told them about how hard this is and how this made me feel like I was never ready. Finally, I told them that all that I would expect a child, and I had no intention of sharing this with them. It was a difficult letter to write.
Pretty sure something's around here.
My whole letter. Don't have that. Over time, some rivals, how you appear with our son. I knew that without their presence, our son would be happy. I would have her. It's all that mattered. It was the other side of me. I knew the story. This time it was true. My family, my house, my brother, and my parents. That house.
Smash to pieces!
For so many years, I wanted more of a how are they doing again? In the last few months, they started to approach me, not to ask how I was, not to ask Max was going through things. It's a problem. The mistake he made was I, on the other hand, was always decided to be self-responsible. Carrying their own expectations. No one recognizes it. My mother, maybe you need a place to stay, just for a while. She would say, her tone innocent but hiding her true intentions. I would always respond politely but firmly, saying that Max was already an adult and should learn to fend for himself. However, the conversations began to intensify. My parents and even other relatives began to insinuate that I didn't need such a big house and that I could share the space with Max. When that didn't work, the suggestions began to become more direct. The family reunion. The height of the tension came at a Sunday lunch. The whole family was present, as usual. I was already prepared to deal with the comments, but this time, the situation got out of hand. Samuel, we need to talk about something important, my father said, interrupting a casual conversation. I already knew what was coming, but I let him continue. Your mother and I have been talking. It would be a good idea for Max keep house. He's going through a hard time, and you can afford to live somewhere else. I was stunned. What? Are you telling me that I should give my house, which I bought with my own effort, to Max? He doesn't work. He's never worked hard for anything. And now you think he deserves more than me. My mother tried to intervene with that calm and manipulative tone. Samuel, dear, you can afford it. You've always been the most successful. Max just needs an opportunity, and this can be what he needs to start over. My patience was running out. Start over. He's never started anything. Max has always lived off of you, and has never lifted a finger to change that. And now you want me to just hand over everything I've achieved. Silence fell over the table. No one expected me to react so firmly, but I knew I had to defend what was mine. The family's arrogance. In the days that followed lunch, the situation got worse. My parents kept insisting, and now even my uncles and cousins started to get involved. It seemed like everyone was determined to make me look like the villain of the story for not helping my brother. The conversations with my mother, in particular, were the worst. She always seemed to find a way to blame me, as if I were responsible for Max's failure. You've always been the most capable, Samuel. Why can't you help your brother now? He's always admired you. You know, she would say, trying to appeal to my sense of guilt. But I wouldn't give in. I knew that this was yet another attempt at emotional manipulation, something my mother had always done masterfully. For years, she had used family love as a weapon to get what she wanted, but this time, I was determined not to fall into that trap. Max, on the other hand, continued living as usual, without work, without responsibilities. just waiting for something to fall into his lap. I rarely saw him, and when we did, he acted as if nothing was happening, as if he already knew that one way or another, the house would end up being his. The conspiracy revealed. A few months passed, and the family pressure only increased. One day, while reviewing some documents, I realized that something was strange. Among old papers, I found a draft of an email conversation between my parents and a lawyer. The message talked about the possibility of transferring the house to Max, using a legal trick that allowed my parents to intervene in the property, since it had been purchased while I was still living with them. That made me furious. Not only were they trying to convince me to hand over the house willingly, but they were also planning a way to legally take it back if I refused. I immediately confronted my parents. Were you really planning to steal my house behind my back? I immediately confronted my parents. Were you really planning to steal my house behind my back? Did you think I would never find out? My mother, always with her manipulative calm, tried to deflect the situation. Samuel, you're interpreting everything wrong. We were just exploring possibilities in case you decided to help your brother, but I knew the truth. They would never see me as the deserving son. For them, Max would always be the center of their attention, no matter how much he failed. And now, they were willing to step over me to ensure that he continued in the privileged position he had always had. The final decision. I knew that this situation could not continue. It was time to make a definitive decision. I had tried to talk, argue, and even walk away, but nothing seemed to work. My family was determined to take what was mine from me. I went to my lawyer and explained the whole situation. He advised me to protect my assets and ensure that, legally, no one could touch my house. I began the process of shielding the property, making sure that no one could use it as a bargaining chip to support Max's irresponsible lifestyle. In the following days, my family began to notice that I was distancing myself. Visits and phone calls became more rare, and eventually, even the nagging stopped. They realized that I would not give in, and that I was prepared to defend what was mine. However, the silence brought a new wave of reflections. As much as I had won this battle, a part of me still felt lost. How did I get to a point where I needed to protect myself from my own family? What happened to the idea that family love should be unconditional and based on mutual support? Aloneness in the future. Over time, the relationship with my parents and Max fell apart completely. I began to live my life peacefully, without the constant interference of my overbearing family. However, the emotional wounds were still there. It wasn't easy to accept that my parents, who were supposed to be my greatest allies, had become my enemies in the fight for something I had worked so hard to achieve. Despite everything, I knew that the decision to walk away was the right one. I couldn't continue to allow their toxicity to poison my life and my own values. The secret revealed. I was sitting on my porch, having breakfast, when my sister, Jenny, called. It was unusual for her to call me so early, especially on a Sunday morning. I answered the phone with a strange feeling in my stomach, as if something was about to change my life. "Steve, I need to talk to you." "Urgent," Jenny said, her voice shaking. Jenny had always been the more impulsive sister, but there was something about the way she said it that worried me. I arranged to meet her at the park near my house. When I arrived, she was already sitting on the bench, nervously fiddling with her hair. Her eyes were puffy, as if she had been crying all night. "Jenny, what's going on?" I asked, sitting down next to her. She hesitated for a few seconds before dropping the bombshell that would blow my mind and turn my world upside down. "I'm pregnant," she began, her voice low. "And the baby isn't Felipe's." I was silent for a moment. Felipe was her husband and also my childhood friend, someone who had always been by my side since we were kids. We had shared so many memories, and now Jenny was about to tell me something that would shake not only my relationship with him, but our entire family. "Whose child is it then?" I asked, feeling the tension rise in my chest. Jenny hesitated once more, looking away. I knew that what was about to come out of her mouth would be worse than I could imagine. "It's Uncle Antonio's," she whispered, as if she was afraid to say the words out loud. I literally froze. My Uncle Antonio? My mother's older brother. He had always been the most charismatic guy, someone who always seemed to have everything under control. But I never imagined that he would be involved in something like this. "What?" My voice came out louder than I intended. "Are you telling me that the father of your child is our uncle?" "Jenny, this is crazy." She started to cry. I know it's crazy, but it happened. I don't know how it happened. I don't know what to do, Steve. I just know I can't tell anyone. Felipe would never forgive me. And our family. God, what would they do if they found out? I was stunned, not knowing what to say. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. I looked at my sister, trying to understand how she could have gotten to this point. How she got involved with our uncle. Jenny, how did this start? She took a deep breath and wiped away her tears. It was a few months ago. We were at a barbecue at our parents' house, and Antonio was there. We talked more than usual, and after a few drinks, it ended up happening. I didn't plan it, Steve. I don't even know how to let this go, but now I'm pregnant, and I don't know what to do. I got up from the bench and started pacing, trying to process what Ginny had just told me. The thought of keeping this secret seemed impossible. My head was spinning, and the weight of responsibility felt unbearable. How could I hide something so devastating from Felipe, a friend who trusted me so much? And what about our parents? They would never get over this betrayal. Ginny, do you realize how serious this is? This will ruin not only your marriage, but our entire family. You're asking me to lie to Felipe, to hide something he has a right to know. And our uncle. Hey, God, he's to blame for all this too. How am I supposed to face him? Ginny lowered her head, holding back tears. I know, Steve, I know. But I'm desperate. What would you do in my place? I can't destroy Felipe's life and our family. I need time to think. Please help me. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the anger and confusion inside me. Ginny was trapped in a web of lies, but I was being dragged into it too. And yet, I couldn't just ignore her. She was my sister. Ginny, I'm not going to lie. I'm furious with you, but you're my sister, and I'm going to help you. But you have to promise me you'll figure this out. I can't carry this weight alone. She nodded, relieved. I promise, Steve. Just help me get through this. The tensions mount. In the days that followed, tension grew inside me. I tried to maintain my normal routine, but the weight of this secret suffocated me. Every time I saw Felipe, I felt a crushing guilt. He smiled, talking excitedly about his future with Jenny, completely oblivious to the fact that his life was about to fall apart. I tried to avoid visiting my parents' house, fearing seeing Uncle Antonio. Every time I thought about him, my blood boiled. I wanted to confront him, demand an explanation, but I knew that if I did, everything would come out. The situation was out of control. One day, while I was at work, I received a text from Jenny. Steve, we need to talk. Felipe is suspicious. He thinks there's something wrong with me. I knew at that moment that everything was about to explode. We met again in the park, just like the first time. Jenny was pale, visibly nervous. What happened? I asked. He started to notice that I'm distant. He asked if there's something I want to tell him. Steve, he's starting to connect the dots. I don't know how much longer I can keep this hidden. My patience was running out. Jenny, you can't keep doing this. You need to tell the truth before it gets any worse. If he finds out on his own, it'll be 10 times worse. What about Uncle Antonio? Does he already know you're pregnant? She shivered. Not yet. I don't even know how to tell him. I'm afraid he'll turn his back on me. I rubbed my temples, trying to think of a solution. You can't keep hiding this. There will come a time when you won't have control of the situation anymore. And frankly, Jenny, Felipe deserves to know the truth. The unexpected confrontation a few days later. I was at home when I heard a loud knock on the door. I opened it and found Felipe standing there. His face was somber, and there was something in his eyes that made me realize the truth had finally gotten to him. Steve, I need to talk to you, he said, walking in without waiting for an invitation. I felt my heart race. Sure, Felipe. What's going on? He sat down on the couch, running his hands over his face. I know something's wrong with Jenny. She's been acting strange for months. I thought it was stress, tiredness, but now I know it's more than that. I tried to remain calm, but the tension in the air was palpable. What are you trying to say, Felipe? He looked me straight in the eyes. I know Jenny's hiding something from me, and I think you know what it is. So I'm going to ask you straight out. Is there something I should know? My stomach churned. Felipe was pressuring me, and I knew I couldn't lie to him. But at the same time, I couldn't betray Jenny's trust. The room was silent for a long moment, and I tried to think of what to say. Felipe, I don't think I'm the right person to answer that, I finally said. Felipe huffed, irritated. Steve, you're my childhood friend. If something's going on, I need to know. I love Jenny, but I can't keep living like this, with this doubt eating away at our every moment. Before I could answer, the door to the room opened. Jenny walked in, her eyes wide when she saw Felipe there. Felipe, what are you doing here? She asked, trying to sound casual, but the nervousness in her voice was clear. He stood up, turning to face her. I'm here to hear the truth, Jenny, and I expect you to give it to me now. Jenny's face paled. She looked at me for support, but I knew I couldn't do anything to help her. This was the moment when she would have to face the consequences of her choices. The revelation and the price of truth. Jenny stood still for a few seconds, in shock. Felipe waited for an answer, and I watched the scene, feeling the weight of the moment. She took a deep breath, fighting back tears. Felipe, I need to tell you something, she began, her voice barely audible. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. He stepped forward, his eyes fixed on hers. What is it, Jenny? What did you do? I had an affair, she finally admitted, her voice breaking. It was with Uncle Antonio. The silence that followed was deafening. Felipe, stunned, took a step back as if he had been physically struck. I could see the shock and anger rising in his eyes. What? He whispered in disbelief. Are you telling me that you cheated on me with Uncle Antonio? And you're pregnant with his child? Jenny nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes, I'm so sorry, Felipe. I never meant to put you, but now I don't know what to do. Felipe stood still for a moment, breathing heavily. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out the door, slamming it behind him. Jenny collapsed on the couch, sobbing. I went over to her, but I didn't know what to say. The truth had finally come out, and the consequences would be devastating. The repercussions the next few days would be difficult. Felipe cut off all contact with Jenny and our family. News of Jenny's affair with Uncle Antonio spread quickly among the relatives, causing a rift in the family. Some tried to justify Jenny's actions, while others, like our parents, were outraged and embarrassed. Uncle Antonio, in turn, disappeared from public life, avoiding family gatherings and any interaction. It was obvious that he was also suffering the repercussions of his actions. Jenny, now isolated and dealing with guilt, took refuge in our parent house. She knew that, although I had helped her up to this point, I could no longer carry this burden for her. The new beginning. A few months later, when the chaos began to calm down, Jenny made the most difficult decision of her life, to raise her son alone. Felipe had filed for divorce and was rebuilding his life away from all this confusion. From an early age, my family has always maintained a strict sense of honor and reputation, something that permeated every decision and behavior. They valued appearances more than anything else, and this shaped the way they treated their children, including me. Growing up under this burden, I learned to keep my head down, follow the rules, do what was expected of me. However, I was not prepared for what was to come, a secret that would explode, ready to destroy the shred of normality that still existed in my life. The fatal reunion. It was an ordinary afternoon, a gentle breeze passing through the living room windows, when my parents called me for a conversation that would change everything. Sitting at the kitchen table, it was strangely serious, but more so than usual. My mother, her hands clasped on the table, looked straight at me, while my father stood rigidly, as if he were about to pronounce a verdict. Felix, we need to talk. My father began, his voice deep and authoritative. I sat down, trying to hide the uneasiness that was beginning to take hold of me. I could feel that this would not be a normal conversation. Amanda is pregnant, my mother announced bluntly. Amanda, my cousin. We had always been close. We spent time together at family gatherings and weekend get-togethers, but there had never been anything beyond the natural camaraderie between cousins. The news of a pregnancy took me by surprise. But what came next was even worse. Then you're going to marry her, my father declared, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. What? My voice came out louder than I had intended, a mix of disbelief and anger. Me? Marry Amanda? But I'm not the father. My father sighed impatiently as my mother tried to maintain a semblance of calm. We know that, she admitted without hesitation. But the family needs to be protected. People will talk, and you're the only one who can fix this. Fix. I repeated, incredulous. You're asking me to lie, to take responsibility for a child that isn't mine, just to save the family's reputation? We're not asking Felix. My father snapped, his voice cold. We're telling you this is what's going to happen. Amanda is alone, and you're the only option. I stood up from the table, my heart racing and anger starting to bubble. What about the child's father? Where does he fit into this?
There it
Why
is.
would he take responsibility? The silence that followed was more telling than any answer could have been. I watched my parents exchange brief glances, as if they were avoiding saying something. And in that moment, a suspicion began to form in my mind. Something wasn't right. Who's the father? I demanded, looking directly at my mother. She hesitated, her hand shaking slightly on the table. Finally, she murmured, "Your brother." It was as if the world had stopped. My brother, the prodigal son, my parents' favorite, the one who had always gotten away with his irresponsibility, protected by my parents' blind adoration for him. And now he had put our family in an impossible situation. And once again, I was the one who had to fix things.
You're
No,
back.
I set my voice firm.
We were just about to start looking for you.
If he's the father,
Where'd you
let him
two get
take
lost to?
responsibility.
The storm
My
got
father
so
stood
bad
up, his
last
face
night.
turning red with
Half the
anger.
western island
You have no
completely
choice,
vanished.
Felix.
Everyone was
This
so
family
worried about
depends
you.
on you. Your brother, he has a bright future ahead of him, and we can't let him ruin it with one mistake. His future. I laughed in disbelief.
What's that supposed to mean?
What about
It
me?
means
Are you
what it
willing to
sounds like.
sacrifice my life so he can go on
lot.
without consequences? You've
Yep.
always been the strong
Almost more
one,
than I could
Felix.
take.
My mother said
All a bit
softly,
hazy.
trying to appeal to my
But things
sense of
got real hot and
responsibility.
heavy that
We
night.
knew you could
You were
handle
really
this.
going at
And
it.
we know Amanda trusts you. She trusts me because I'm the
Well,
only one who
in
hasn't
any event,
betrayed her.
I'm glad
I
you two
replied,
are all right.
bitterness rising inside me. But I won't carry that lie. You can forget about it. I left the room before they could say anything else. The sound of the doors slamming echoing through the house.
Why,
At that
whatever
moment was that I
for?
wouldn't let my brother
I
get away
merely
with it
saw
this
this
time.
as a chance to get my
Confrontation
hands
was
on some
Amanda.
rare plants I
Still
want.
stunned by the revelation,
Rather,
I went
it
to
seems
Amanda's
that I
house
was
that
the
same
one who
night.
put you two
I
in a
needed to
fix.
hear her, to understand what was
Oh,
happening for Rose.
speaking of which,
When I
we've got
arrived,
what you
she
were
was
after
sitting on the
right
couch,
here.
her eyes swollen from crying so much. When she saw me, she became even more upset.
Ah,
Felix,
yes.
I'm so
Thank
sorry,
you.
she began, her voice cracking.
Fascinating.
You're
So
sorry.
this is
I
specular
tried to
grass.
contain my anger.
I'll get to work
I was
making
dragged
us some
into this
medicines
situation
with Joel
without
right
even
away.
knowing what was happening.
Excuse me.
And now you expect me to fix everything, as if I had some kind of obligation. She
You
wiped
sure
away
got
the
a
tears
one-track
quickly,
mind.
but the sadness
I
in
like
her
it.
eyes was palpable.
No matter how
I
difficult
didn't want
things
this to
get,
happen.
he never lets it
But
faze
our
him.
parents,
Even
they
when
think
we
this
were
is the
running
only
from the
solution.
Griever,
But
he
it's
stayed
not,
cool as a
Amanda.
cucumber.
By
Why
the
doesn't my
way,
brother
how are
take
the repairs coming
responsibility?
along?
He's the
As you
father.
can see,
He's the one who should
we're
deal
just
with
about
this.
done.
She
Right
lowered her
now,
head.
Cruz and Ezer are doing the final checks.
You won't.
Good to
You
hear.
know how your parents are.
In that
They would
case,
never
once
force
everything's
you to
ready,
do it.
let's be
But
on
they're
our way.
forcing me, I said, crossing my arms. Why did you accept me? Why didn't you fight? Amanda sighed deeply. I was scared. I made a bad choice. Now I don't know how to get out of it. I looked at her, trying to send that to the sun. It was just as trapped. Family controls. She didn't have the strength to fight this one. She probably expected as usual to solve the problem. I'm not going to marry you, Amanda, I declared firmly. This is something you and my brother need to work out. You did this. Now you need to deal with the consequences. She looked at me desperate. Please, Felix. I know this is wrong, but I don't know what to do. Our parents don't give us any other option. I'll find another option, I promised. Feeling determination grow inside me, but it won't be at the cost of my life. Just wondering, could we be forced to take our child that is born? And so, without another word, I left Amanda's house. The weight of responsibility that was mine, that I knew I had to face. Planned in the days that followed, I pulled it about I knew that in order to resolve the situation, I would need to confront my brother and somehow expose the truth. And without it destroying Amanda or trapping me in a destiny that wasn't mine, I spoke to trusting friends, seeking advice and support. After all, this wasn't a fight I could face. My brother had me held accountable for his actions, and my parents needed to understand that they could no longer use my life as a shield to protect his bad choices. One night, after several attempts to confront my brother, all of which he avoided, I finally managed to corner him. The confrontation with my brother that night, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to face my brother Him. I had to try to talk to him for days, but he always found excuses to get out of serious conversations. I knew that if I
Okay,
went to resolve
let's
this,
get back into the swing of things. Sanjas, away! Try steering safely this time, maybe. Your lover's quarrel is getting a little played out.
Huh? Don't you mean brothers quarrel? Anyway, it won't happen again.
Harsha can be surprisingly clueless sometimes. Hey, Google. What do you think happened? You don't suppose Battle and Harsha actually... But there's no way they'd be so hung around each other if that were the case.
Marry her to cover up
Maybe
your
that's just
lies.
the way it is with them.
In a sense, my brother
Can't stand not knowing!
Oh, so that's it.
What's up with Rosa?
Swap everything like that based on anger.
Let's just leave her to herself for now.
Our parents have already
Yeah.
decided.
Wouldn't want to get in the way of her delusions.
She's pregnant. Someone has to take responsibility.
I need a break.
Feeling anger bubbling inside me. Yes, someone has to take responsibility. And that someone is you, the child's father. I won't carry the blame for your bad decision. It's your responsibility. He rolled his eyes, really uncomfortable with the fact that he was being confronted. You know how our parents are Felix. They won't get into this. They've always protected me, and this time will be no different. But I won't let that happen, I said firmly. This time, you'll have to face the consequences. I won't sacrifice my life for mistakes. My brother was silent for a moment, perhaps finally realizing that I was serious. He looked uncomfortable, but still reluctant to give in. Then what are you going to do? Are you going to tell them everything? He asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. They won't believe you. I don't need them to believe me, I said. I'm going to tell the truth and whoever needs to hear it. You have to make sure Amanda has the support she needs to not put up with the charade. He laughed, but it was a forced laugh. Good luck with that, Felix. You've always been the good one, the responsible one. Do you think you can change everything now? Our parents will never support you. I stared at him, feeling the weight of truth in my words. I don't need their support. Not anymore. I just need to do what's right, and that's what I'm going to do. My brother tried to walk out the door, but I didn't budge. Tomorrow, you're going to tell them everything. And if you don't, I will. Revelation's the next day. I went to my parents' house. I already knew the conversation would be difficult, but I was determined. When I arrived, Amanda was there, obviously anxious, and my parents looked imposing as always, ready to dictate what would be done. Felix, my father began with his usual authoritative tone. We think the date should be set for next month. There will be a wedding, I said bluntly. My mother's eyes widened in surprise. What do you mean by that? Of course, there will be a wedding. Amanda needs you, and the family needs to maintain its honor. No, what you need is the truth. I continued, taking a deep breath. Amanda is pregnant, but the child is not mine. It is my brother's. A dead silence fell over the room. My parents stood in shock, unable to process what I had just said. Amanda, with her eyes wide and her mouth half open, seemed paralyzed. Finally, my father broke the silence, his voice full of disbelief. That's not true, he said, shaking his head in denial. You're lying to avoid your responsibility. I'm not lying, I insisted. My brother is the father of the child. You know it. You've always known. You're just trying to cover it up because he's your favorite. My mother began to cry, perhaps not out of sadness, but out of fear of what this revelation might cause. Felix, please don't do this. Don't throw our family into chaos because of one mistake. You've already thrown the family into chaos by trying to force this situation, I replied firmly. I'm not going to marry Amanda, and my brother needs to take responsibility for his actions. My father, visibly furious, stood up from his chair. You've always been the rebel, Felix. Always defying us. But this time, you will obey. This family will not be destroyed by your whim. I'm not destroying anything, I retorted. I'm just refusing to sacrifice myself again. And if you keep trying to cover this up, I will make sure to tell everyone the truth. I'm no longer willing to be the solution to his mistakes. Amanda's choice, Amanda, who had remained silent until then, finally spoke up. Her voice was shaking, but there was growing determination in her words. Felix, I'm so sorry about all of this. But you're right. I can't keep living this lie. I can't marry you knowing that my child's father is your brother. My parents looked at her in disbelief. Amanda, you can't be serious. My mother said, trying to control the situation. You need to think about your child's future. I am, Amanda replied. And what you're trying to do isn't fair to anyone. Not to Felix, not to me, not to the child. My father, clearly frustrated, began to pace the room, his anger boiling. You're making a huge mistake. This is the kind of thing that destroys families. You've already destroyed this family by trying to manipulate us all, I said, facing my parents. I refuse to be a part of this any longer. Amanda started to cry again, but this time it was as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. I will take responsibility for this, she said. I don't know what will happen to my future, but I can't keep lying. The path to truth. After that confrontation, things changed radically. Amanda withdrew from the family's pressure and decided to face the truth, even though she knew it would be difficult. My brother, still in denial, was confronted directly by her and, although reluctant, finally admitted paternity of the child. My parents, on the other hand, were divided. They could no longer deny the reality, but they also could not accept what this meant for the family's image. They tried to maintain some control, but the truth had already come out, and there was no turning back. As for me, for the first time in many years, I felt a profound relief. I was free of the weight that my family had always placed on my shoulders, the feeling of the confusion. When the call came, I was finishing closing contracts for an important client. The phone vibrating on the table interrupted my concentration, but I answered it quickly, without imagining that my life was about to be turned upside down. Hello. My voice was calm, professional as always. You think you can run away from your responsibilities, huh, Pedro? You think you can disappear and not pay what you owe? My expression hardened. It wasn't the first time I had received a strange call, but something in that threatening tone made me immediately feel alert. Sorry, but I think you've reached the wrong person, I replied with slight discomfort. My name is Samuel, not Pedro. There was a pause on the other end of the line, as if the man was processing the information. Then he laughed, but the sound of the laugh was cold and humorless. Samuel. Oh, sure. The innocent. You think you can fool me with that story, Pedro? The money is due today. $100,000. And I'm not waiting any longer. You have until the end of the day to pay me back. Before I could protest or explain, the line was cut, leaving me with a strange sense of unease. My twin brother Pedro and I were nearly identical in appearance, but we'd always been very different in terms of personality and life choices. Pedro had a history of getting into trouble, but this time it seemed like he'd gone too far. A $100,000 debt, and now I was in the middle of it. Knowing I couldn't ignore the situation, I tried calling Pedro, but his phone was off. A sense of panic began to set in. I hadn't spoken to him in weeks, and the last time we'd seen him, he'd been fidgeting, as if he were preparing for something big. But I never imagined he would get involved with loan sharks. I knew I had to find him before things got any worse. If that loan shark was already confusing me with Pedro, it wouldn't be long before the situation became untenable. I needed answers and fast. The first threat. In the following days, my life became a nightmare. I started receiving threatening messages, always addressed to Pedro, always demanding the $100,000 that I obviously didn't. I worked as a freelance graphic designer, and even though I had a stable career, that amount was far beyond my financial means. I knew Pedro was hiding, but I had no idea where he could be. I tried to talk to mutual acquaintances, but they all said the same thing. He disappeared. One morning, after a week of torment, a loud knock on my apartment door made me shudder. When I opened it, I came across two tall, intimidating. One of them, a bald man with a scar across his face, stared at me with cold eyes. Pedro, do you think you can run away from us? Did you think hiding here would solve your problem? I tried to remain calm, but my heart was racing. I'm not Pedro. I'm Samuel, his brother. The bald man let out an ironic laugh, looking at his partner, who just crossed his arms, seeming unimpressed by nothing. Do you think we're idiots? Twins, huh? How convenient. But it doesn't matter if you're Pedro or Samuel. Someone will pay this debt, and we're charging whoever we find first. I felt a knot form in my stomach. They really thought I was lying, or maybe they just didn't care who paid, as long as they got the money. It was a desperate situation. Look, I don't know where Pedro is. I tried to argue, keeping my voice steady. but I can't help you find it. Just give me some time. The old man shook his head. Time is something you don't have. But wait, if we don't get the money or him, we'll come back. And it'll be worse. They left, leaving a terrifying silence. This was the kind of threat I knew I couldn't ignore. In search of Pedro, with the deadline set by the loan sharks hanging over my head, I began a real hunt for Pedro. He'd always been good at disappearing if he wanted to, but I knew his habits. There were a few places he used to hide when things got tough. First, I went to the old apartment Pedro had rented a few months earlier. The place was empty, but the neighbors remembered him. A lady down the hall told me that Pedro had left in a hurry a week ago, carrying suitcases. She also mentioned that he was with a woman, but I didn't know who she was. With that vague lead, I continued to search for more information, calling Pedro's old friends and scouring social media. Nothing concrete came up until a familiar name popped up: Sophia. Sophia was an old girlfriend of Pedro's, someone he had broken up with a long time ago, but who apparently he still kept in touch with. She had always been a bit of a mystery, never letting anyone know much about her life, but I knew that if anyone could know something, it would be her. I got her number and called, trying to sound calm despite my growing panic. "Hello, Sophia. This is Samuel, Pedro's brother. I really need to talk to you." There was silence on the other end of the line before she answered. "Samuel, what do you want?" "I haven't spoken to Pedro in a long time. I know, but he's in trouble. He owes a loan shark $100,000, and they think I'm him. I need to find him before things get worse." Sophia sighed heavily, as if she was weighing the consequences of getting involved with Pedro's problems again. "Look, I haven't spoken to him, but I know he's been hanging out with some dangerous people in the last few months. If he's hiding, it's because he's scared. I can give you an address. It's a place he usually goes when he wants to disappear from the map." She gave me the address of a speakeasy on the outskirts of the city, a place where Pedro apparently frequented when things started to fall apart. The confrontation. I went to the speakeasy late that afternoon. The place was dark, poorly lit, with a strong smell of alcohol in the air. As I entered, I looked around, trying to find some trace of Pedro. After a few minutes, I saw a man sitting in the corner of the bar, wearing a jacket that I immediately recognized. It was Pedro, and he looked haggard, nervous. I approached him slowly, trying not to draw too much attention. When I finally reached him, I touched his shoulder. He turned abruptly, his eyes wide. "Samuel, what are you doing here?" I sat down across from him, staring straight at him. "I'm here to save you, Samuel. You owe loan shark $100,000, Pedro. And now they think I'm you. If you don't fix this, I'll pay the price." Pedro hung his head, guilt evident on his face. I didn't know they were going to involve you, Samuel. I never wanted this to happen. They need to fix this now," I insisted. "We have a week before they'll come back, and next time they won't be so patient." Pedro sighed, rubbing his face with his hands. "I don't have that kind of money, Samuel. I don't know what to do." I stared at him, my frustration growing. "You need to face Pedro. You can't keep running away forever." He finally nodded, but I knew he still had a long way to go to sort out his mess. He trained. Over the next few days, Pedro and I began looking for ways to raise the money. We tried selling some of his possessions, although there weren't many. We also tried negotiating with the loan sharks, but they were adamant. They wanted the money, or worse would happen. In the meantime, I kept receiving threatening messages, some of them indicating that the loan sharks were keeping a close eye on me. It was clear that time was running out, and Pedro still didn't seem to have a solution. Until one day, when we were discussing our options, Pedro suggested something that took me completely by surprise. Maybe there's another way," he began hesitantly. I stared at him, not understanding what he meant. "What are you suggesting, Pedro?" I heard they're involved in other things. Illegal things. Maybe if we do some work for them, they'll forgive us the debt." I shook my head indignantly. "You gotta be kidding. You want to get even more involved with these guys?" Pedro shrugged, nearly out of options. "I'm just trying to save our skins." But the idea of getting even more involved in the criminal underworld made me sick. I knew that wasn't the answer. As I pondered how to get out of this situation, an idea began to form in my mind. Maybe there's a way to solve this without sinking ourselves deeper into the mire, a way to outsmart the loan sharks at their own game. The risky plan, As the tension grew, I knew there was no easy way out of this mess, but a nagging thought kept nagging me. What if I could turn the tables? Instead of trying to pay off the debt or implicate Pedro in more crimes, there was a chance I could expose the loan sharks and maybe get away with it. Sure, it would be extremely risky, but what did I have to lose? I sat with Pedro that night, my face set in determination. He nervously started to speak, but I cut him off. Listen, Pedro, I know you think working for these guys might be a solution, but that will only drag us deeper into the hole. I have another plan, and I need you to trust me. Pedro looked at me skeptically. Another plan? What are you thinking of doing? These guys are not idiots, Samuel. They know exactly who they are and what they do. Exactly, I said, leaning in closer so he could hear me clearly. But they don't expect us to fool them either. We can play with their minds. We can expose them and take them down without paying them a dime. Pedro looked confused, but intrigued. Take them down? How? I explained the plan. We would gather enough evidence about the loan shark's illicit activities and turn it all over to the police. Of course, this would mean putting ourselves at risk, but the hope was that with the help of the law, we could not only escape this debt, but also ensure that they would not harass us again. It would be difficult, especially since we would have to work in secret, but I was confident that we could do it. Pedro, however, hesitated. Do you think this will work? What if they find out before we can do anything? We have to be smart and quick, he said, conviction in my voice broke. We will meet with them tomorrow and make them trust that we are interested in resolving the situation in another way. In the meantime, I will be recording everything, recording every move. Pedro was still uneasy, but he knew that this was the best alternative to what he had initially suggested. He did not want to get involved with the loan sharks any longer, but he also knew that our only other option was to face the dire consequences. The decisive meeting. The next day, we met with the loan sharks in a remote warehouse, in a dark and abandoned place on the outskirts of the city. The air was thick with the smell of rust and old oil, and an electric tension hung in the air. The two men who had mistaken me for Pedro were there, along with another, more intimidating group. The bald man who seemed to be the leader looked directly at me. So, Pedro, have you decided to be a man and pay off your debt, or are you still going to keep making up stories about your twin brother? I took a deep breath, trying not to show the fear I felt in the moment. My plan was in motion, and I needed to be cool. Secretly, I had slipped a small recording device into my pocket, capturing every word. We're here to solve this, I said, keeping my voice down. We just want to know if there's a way to pay off the debt without so much. The loan sharks looked at each other since there's just the leader narrowed his eyes. Now, cash. How do you think you're going to do that? Work, Pedro finally said, joining in the conversation. You guys have work that needs to be done. We can do something to make up for the debt.
Left brother boxed me for being short, so I brought a measuring tape to set the record straight. Now he was interested in denying everything. Original post. I am a 5'1" female and my lab partner constantly makes fun of me for being short. For example, I came back from the bathroom and he said, I thought you fell in the toilet because you're so tiny. He also said that my hair is so big it makes my head and me look even more tiny. I am not insecure about my height nor does making fun of it offend me, but it's annoying and ironic because he's short too. Looks 5'6". And yes, I know it might be because he's interested in me, but I don't find him attractive so the teasing isn't cute. It's just very, very annoying. Last lab I had enough of it and basically told him to shut up because he's like 5'5". He said he's not 5'5" and he's 5'9". I know I am very short, but he is definitely not over 5'7". We started arguing about it, so I told him I'll bring a measuring tape next class and we'll find out the truth. I started to feel a bit bad after because I know men are very insecure about their height. However, him obviously lying about his height and constantly making fun of me makes me feel bringing the measuring tape make me an asshole. I accidentally put F22 in my title, for my lab partner. To correct myself, I am female 20 and my lab partner that makes fun of me is male 22. More explanation as to what he says. Editor's note, fix the title of the boron for clarity. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. NTA, he's finally found someone shorter than him and it makes him feel superior. If he can't take it, he shouldn't dish it out. OP, do you think me bringing the measuring tape will make me the asshole? Commenter. NTA. Bring in the measuring tape and a big, black Sharpie. Don't say a word to him. Go to the door frame and mark 4, 5s and 6. Between the 5 and 6 foot marks, place the inches. Remember how parents used to measure kids' heights against the wall for the door frame and leave marks for little Susie is so tall on October 31st and Ben is so tall on the same day. Don't say another word to him, just leave the measuring marks so he has to look at them every day as he passes by the chart. Keep direct eye contact with him. I'm rolling with laughter. Thank you for this idea. I'm definitely going to do this. I was planning on just measuring him, but the marks on the wall would be more accurate. I don't know if I would be allowed to draw on the wall with a Sharpie though. I may do it with a washable marker instead. Commenter. NTA. He shouldn't dish it if he can't take it, but I don't know that it'd help to escalate with the tape if you'll still need to work with him. Can you switch partners? OOP. No, I can't switch my partner. This is my assigned partner for the rest of the semester. Thankfully I only have 3 classes left. Commenter. Downvoted. He's definitely trying to flirt with you, IMO. He wants to emphasize how small you are because it makes him feel bigger and he's probably not used to that LOL. He wants to make it clear that compared to him you're just cute and small. He's obviously insecure about his own height. I do think being short has wildly different implications for men and women, but it's not like he decided to do this after he made an offhand comment. You're clearly annoyed by this and he's being disruptive and kind of desperate by not shutting the fuck up about it. Measuring tape might be the exact tool you need to show him why this kind of shit is very bad for an LOL. OP. I think so too, which is why I was hesitant to say anything. I didn't want to make him more insecure. I don't think he means it in a harmful way, but it's just annoying because he mentions it every single lab. However, last class he kept making inappropriate comments about our other lab partner and I getting married and having babies. That really crossed the line for me. I gave him a death stare and told him to stop in all seriousness, because the comments he was making were just making things awkward and uncomfortable. He chose not to listen and keep going thinking he was funny. After that I lost all respect for him. Commenter, haha. I had a guy I worked with once who insisted he was 5'8". I literally said we're the exact same height, and I'm 5'3". Dude had the audacity to say someone had lied to me because I was obviously 5'7" or so. NTA, don't let their fragile masculinity bother you. Measure that boy. OEUP. This is absolutely hilarious. This guy said the same thing, that I must be 5'5". So now I'm suddenly not short anymore, Hail Mayo. The audacity of these men to lie by a whole 4 inches thinking people won't notice is just embarrassing. OOP adds a bit more from his bullying. I'll tell you what I told the other person who said the same thing. To clarify, he also said, I thought you fell in the toilet because you're so tiny. When I got back because it took a while. He also said my hair is so big it makes my head and me look even more tiny. To add on, he repeatedly calls me shorty, or brings up my race saying my people are usually short. When I try to ignore him, he just keeps repeating the same thing to annoy me and get a reaction. I love being short, so there's nothing to be sensitive about. It's him being annoying and making these comments to someone he barely knows, all the while he's also very short, that bothers me. Oh, and I'm bringing the tape. Update. Same post. Update. I got to class late because of traffic, so I didn't have time to tape it up. Also, there is no actual wall beside me, so nowhere I could really tape it. But I still measured him. I whipped my tape measure out and they started laughing at first because everyone knew what was about to go down. Before I measured him, he asked me what the margin of error was and said, that thing is 2-3 inches off. We both knew he lied at this point, LOL. But I insisted on measuring him, and at first he didn't want to get measured. I told him to take his shoes off and he said he didn't want to. I said I'm subtracting an inch from the measurement then. He was 5'7" with the shoes on, so without them he's actually a little less. Even after I clearly measured him, he kept denying it, saying it's wrong, that I measured him wrong and the tape measure is incorrect. He then looked up how tall is 67 inches, because he kept saying that must not be 5'7". I couldn't believe he kept denying it even though I clearly just measured him. His friend, in the lab group across from us, is about the same height as him and also lied about his height last time. So he was embarrassed too because they both were obviously lying. I made a joke about how the top 2 inches must be invisible and he wasn't too happy. Our lab TA 6'2" came over and asked what the measuring tape was for. I told him it was to measure his height, pointing to my lab partner. I said he lied and the TA started laughing too. Next week I'm thinking of just taking the measuring tape at the door before class so they're always reminded of it when they walk in. There's really nothing more I can do. We both know he lied even if he doesn't admit it. Editor's note. Mark has concluded since OOP hasn't updated and proved her point, everyone knows the kid was lying. Now to the next story. Story 2. After years of bullying, my sister invited me to dinner. When I arrived, it. She made me clean up, calling me a pathetic waitress. My parents have never concealed the fact that my sister, Helen, has always been the best child in the family. The youngest of my parents' children, she was considered their miracle child. Despite having serious health issues, my parents had been trying for years to have another child after them. My parents were effectively told to give up on growing their family after my mother experienced problems following my delivery, which prompted physicians to advise against getting pregnant again. But my mother defied all expectations and got pregnant again 5 years later. For my father, who was thrilled about the possibility of having another child, this news was nothing short of a miracle. This position as a miracle baby had a significant impact on my sister's upbringing and the way my parents regarded her. They have always treated her like a queen, going above and beyond to make sure she has the finest of everything. Her unique position within the family was further cemented by the lavish celebration of each of her accomplishments and milestones.
All done. I hope I did a good job.
That my sister had a special and elevated place in our parents' affections, since this partiality was never covert. Rather, it was publicly expressed and accepted. Not to be misunderstood, my parents also made sure I had all I needed. However, their treatment of me frequently seemed like an afterthought. For example, school functions. My parents would always choose to go to my sister's function if we had activities on the same day. As if my wants and occurrences were somehow less significant, they would explain that she was the youngest and so required them more. My parents still treasure the innumerable childhood photos of my sister that are painstakingly arranged in albums. They haven't even
Great
seen
work, everyone!
On the other hand, saying that my photos were lost in a storm. I would have liked to see how I grew up. Therefore, I wish they could have at least saved a couple photos.
Great work, everyone!
In the same way as my sisters, it's difficult to avoid feeling like an afterthought. When I was growing up, my sister Helen's problems, no matter how minor, were promptly addressed and fixed. However, my father would brush me off and label me spoiled if I ever complained or wanted something. My mother would reprimand me for being more confident like my sister.
Great work, everyone!
Or would be theatrical if I ever felt nervous about trying new things or approaching strangers. I always felt that my sister's worries and emotions were more important than mine because of the way my parents treated me. Then came the game of blame. I was also held accountable for my sister's activities if she ever committed a transgression. My parents say that since I was the eldest, I was taught her to be better. Because of my birth order, I was always held accountable, even if I had nothing to do with her behavior. This unwarranted ongoing blaming made me even more of the underdog and made me live in perpetual shadow of my sister. Helen didn't help either. She was well aware of how to take advantage of her status as the favorite child, and frequently used it to outdo me or get away with things. She would often coerce me into letting her use my possessions or put on my clothes without my consent during even the most minor arguments. She would go to our parents and complain if I ever ventured to object, accusing me of being conceited and self-centered. I would unavoidably receive criticism for not sharing and be made to feel guilty in every circumstance. But Helen's actions were distinctly biased. She was always very protective of her belongings and never let me touch them. We shared a room for a long time, and she aggressively protected her side and possessions. The dynamic remained the same even after we went into different rooms. She was quite particular about her belongings, but she always wanted me to be understanding and giving with mine. It was discouraging and frustrating to experience this double standard. I always felt alone and underappreciated because of Helen's ability to control circumstances to her advantage and my parents' steadfast support of her. They believed Helen could do no wrong, while I was always in the wrong, regardless of what I did. I had severe depression as a result of my parents' and sister's behavior. As a teenager, I experienced severe problems with my self-image and my confidence began to decline. Particularly when Helen would argue with me or make fun of me, the tension was unbearable. I was constantly on edge due to my fear of confrontation, and I frequently felt like I was about to have a panic attack because of my parents' combative yelling. I would feel as though I was choking beneath the weight of their disappointment and rage when they approached too close during their outbursts. My family didn't seem to be aware of or concerned about my difficulties. With no one to turn to for help, I felt like an animal in a cage, caught in a vicious cycle of mental and emotional suffering.
Oh, defense right here. Oh, it's just over this one, Mom. Oh, really?
Writing down my thoughts in a journal was therefore the only thing that gave me comfort. I would write my heart out on those pages every night, sharing my sorrows, disappointments, and anxieties. It was the only setting where I felt free to be totally open about my situation. It gave me some serenity and allowed me to process the pandemonium around me. Because I was worried that Helen may discover the journal and make fun of my weaknesses, I always kept it hidden beneath my bed. My worst nightmare came true one day. While I was out, Helen, who had a tendency of prying into my room even though I had repeatedly asked her to leave, discovered my journal. My one aim must have been violated when she read through its contents. My parents and Helen were seated in the living room with particularly serious expressions when I got home that evening. Given their solemn looks, I assumed there might have been a death in the family and inquired about their well-being. In order to speak with me, my dad asked me to sit down. As I obeyed, my heart began to race, and I had a bad sensation in my stomach. Then, from behind her, my mother took my journal. When I demanded to know what she was doing with my journal, my eyes dilated in amazement and disbelief. While my mother gave me an unusually serious look and inquired as to whether what I had written actually expressed my innermost sentiments, Helen simply grinned, taking pleasure in my pain. I felt completely exposed and deceived at that very moment. My notebook had been my lone haven, where I could vent my suffering and annoyance without worrying about criticism or mockery. My deepest innermost thoughts were now exposed to the very people who inspired me to compose them. I was overcome by the seriousness of the situation, and while I fought to react, I could feel a panic attack coming. Yes, it did reflect my thoughts, I said gently, adding that they had no right to read it. My father shook his head and informed me that they were really worried about me if what I had written was accurate. He went on to add that after reading my journal, they felt that I was a psychopath who needed assistance because of the hatred they thought I had for them, and I gazed at them in confusion. I was shocked beyond belief. I had never said anything harsh about my sister or my parents in my whole journal. All I had done was write down the feelings and experiences their acts had given me over the years. But here they were, turning my sincere thoughts into something evil. For keeping a notebook, my parents began accusing me of writing such dark things, and even calling me a psychopath. My mother continued by accusing me of making things up to fill the book and saying that neither she nor my father had ever treated me in this manner. I needed serious help, she insisted, before I harmed someone. Helen went so far as to comment that she was ashamed to call me her sister after reading my notebook since my actions were clearly not normal. Retorting that I had done nothing wrong and that I had not written anything negative about them, I attempted to defend myself. I clarified that they had no authority to condemn me based on my personal reflections because the notebook was only...
Heck yeah! Let's do it!
However, was obsessed with their story that something was wrong with me and didn't care about my explanations. In front of them, I felt so vulnerable and exposed. They seemed to have taken away the last remnant of my privacy and turned it against me.
Great! This should do it!
Fire!
Now! Take the shot! We did it! Take the shot!
Fire! I experienced a prickling sense
Chew on this!
Nice shot! It seemed as though they were intent on making a mission of change in the course of events. I was deeply hurt all the way.
No harm showing off once in a while.
Started seeing the same thing as though they had actually done something. My psychiatrist recognized my existence and attempted to close the disc before I used my
More sash!
I felt more at ease and was able to move when she read the
That should help.
Since then, it's been easier for me to express myself with paper than in person. I know it's useful to you.
Want some of this? Come on!
Now! That was my innocence, but other family members. They were obviously shocked, but that was so significant. Even unexpected. They were sorry for their previous actions. Since I was blessed up for them, they acknowledged they still wanted to. They pleaded with me to work them, but they shared this new base of joy. Their apologies was as far as I chose to forgive them and invite my parents to my wedding since I was starting a new chapter.
Suck on this!
In addition, as my sister had done, I finally refused to then. In retrospect, I'm glad I invited my parents. I had a great time at the wedding. The decision seemed natural since they were truly thrilled for my husband and myself.
We'll take this place back no matter what!
Those bleager ain't getting their way on my watch!
I occasionally have to talk to my sister on these visits. She still attempts to enrage me by making insensitive remarks about my marriage or my family, but I always make sure to confront her conduct head on perspective. Helen is only put on she does with her husband's family. She tries to put it down by making subtle remarks about my spouse or my animals. She expresses her annoyance and discontent with her personal situation through these comments. Helen keeps making these arguments despite my dad's repeated observations of her behavior. That's what that sees. I was told I was pregnant 4 months ago. My spouse and I are staying. He makes twice as much as I do, so we agreed that I should take care of her. My spouse and I are quite sympathetic and supportive of his decision. My sister was upset when she learned that I had chosen to quit my career in order to stay at home with my unborn child. Because I needed both their earnings to make ends meet.
Here I go!
I never wanted to stay in the company, which was the source of her rage. Helen never had the opportunity to unwind and take a break during her pregnancy. As a result, she has referred to me as foolish and suggested that being a stay-at-home mom is humiliating. On multiple occasions, I have just laughed off her comments and told her that I had years of
Looks like
experience.
a hassle and a half.
Give it my old
This
team.
is the issue like claiming that I should never
Again!
This strikes me as ironic because I chose to leave my job. I am aware that her attempts to discredit my choice are obviously motivated more by her personal discontent than her related by any genuine criticism of my decision. I have made every effort to avoid her in order to preserve my mental health and give my full attention to enjoying my pregnancy. My sister contacted me a week ago to invite me to a dinner party she was throwing. She wanted my spouse and I to go, and she intended to invite her family. I used her again as a diversion. As I haven't gone out much since my pregnancy, I was more motivated to go since I recently my sister wanted to pay less attention to me with so many before my spouse had to work late to finish some last-minute chores. He was already under a lot of stress and he kept apologizing for being late to his husband. I didn't hold it against him because I thought it was better to be late than not, so I chose not to cancel despite that. As soon as we got to my sister's house, I saw that most of the people there had already eaten dinner and were chatting casually. My dad doesn't feel comfortable driving at night, so even my parents went after supper. My sister chastised us for being late right away, and though I didn't blame her for being irritated, I took the initiative to apologize.
Here I go!
It was obviously becoming my circumstance.
To pieces!
But she threw me aside and begged me to apologize. There she disclosed that there was no food left for me because everyone had consumed their second or even third. This realization surprised me, especially since I was already really so because I was pregnant. Once finished questions, I told her that I could just order something online because I knew that our targets had caused this trouble. I could still expect the person. It was nice to was not at home and order me something.
Almost there. No losing focus now! Let's join forces!
Serving the guests at dinner, I should do the same because I was related. Helen made it clear that she wanted my assistance because her husband was everything.
I don't see any more
I
food
countered that
around.
Helen should
The fools ran out of luck the second they stepped onto human
She
turf.
responded angrily and contemptuously, telling me that the least I could do was
That went great!
to buy her a hand because no one would be able to comprehend her predicament. In a scathing comment, she went on to say that it wasn't a huge problem if I assisted her as well because
Heck
now
yeah!
I was pregnant.
Let's do it to it!
Waitress for my husband at home. Her scathing remarks caught me off guard and were really painful. The weight of her remarks caused tears to build up in my eyes, adding to my already present feelings of comical emotional vulnerability. I hurried into one of Helen's bedrooms and closed the door because I couldn't feel simple distress.
Why are the curtains?
longer is this gonna take?
And I could feel my own death.
Now!
I firmly
Why are the curtains?
my spouse.
Bullseye! Fire!
Suck on this! Now the battle truly begins! Fire! Now!
Here, you want this? Fire the cannons!
Suck on this! Fire!
No barrier in our way now. Let's head ashore.
My sister was only terrified.
Let's rush them, Shield Sister!
Aye! Har be my witness!
I was aware that my parents would just chastise her for the behavior toward me, but she would never, ever change. I felt a small portion of the humiliation that her husband played with her. Clean up after her the other guests. I wrote her a message. I explained that she seemed to be jealous of me, which is why she was upset with me. I better understand the reaction. I tried to give a clear picture of how it became affected me. Never got into a heated argument as a result. As well as this, those were our parents that he now saw Ellen differently since he couldn't believe she was asking for years. My dad has chosen to listen to me. My mother fully blames me for the said she feels that I went by exposing my sister. I have no regrets of letting my sister see her spouse. Okay? For those who are curious, I wrote what my sister said.
Gotcha!
Especially since she loved American. Okay, too. My brother-in-law was furious with Ellen since his own family was always thought she was in her marriage. Ellen had a tendency to place the blame for any argument with everyone but her sisters. Because of those, Bill has been lenient toward me.
Here I go!
I was really eye-opening when I showed him my journal entries. He had never known who was lesbians, but he had always sensed that his perception of my sister was drastically changed after that last night.
Here I go!
Which has built in a lot of points.
It's a hassle and a half.
I knew you could do it, Karja!
I described all the hardships
Here I go!
as a child. I wanted to parents had always given preference to my sister. Before I nearly went all that. My parents respected her. My brother-in-law was dismissed as just
Okay, let's ride!
even though Eric was unsure of their relationship. He shot out and she realized tears. Consider the relationship as
Nice try! Smash to pieces!
final time. I'm answering some of your questions. After the party, my sister wrote me a chat said, of course, blamed me for everything. My husband had to step in and stop that. She hasn't contacted me or spoken to me since. Second, my mom has insisted that I inform Bill that I have rights to break the events for my own years to apologize. I had it. She persisted in forcing this to the position. My apology was what I did what I did. But I'm not sure what they would decide about his connection to the company. My ultimate objective was to expose my sister and show her that she couldn't continue to get away with disparaging me. I have absolutely no regrets about what I did. Bill is now entirely responsible for determining what is best in his future. Now to the next story, story 3. After 12 years together and 4 years of marriage, my husband wants to try polyamory after falling for someone else. Originally,
Here I go!
I've been married to my husband for 4 years and we've been together for 12 years. After his first financial struggle, we bought a house and we are now happy with kids. A few months ago, my husband fell sick. I decided to pick up the phone and started everything.
Let's join forces! There! Serves you right!
They tried to be just friends, but they couldn't resist. And to show affection for each other, he showed them a text. Also measured
That's a win for us!
Aye. This ought to keep those Grieger in line a bit.
Yes!
There we go.
Choose no matter what. I was very upset and slept at a friend's that night to gather my thoughts. I decided to forgive him because he really felt guilty. I told him that while I was deeply I still appreciated it and looked forward to being on his account. We got into long conversations about how we
Break
were
time's
in a
over.
relationship. I accepted he could love someone else, but said I didn't like him. He agreed. And then yesterday he asked if I was comfortable opening up the marriage to polyamory. He said he still wanted to live with me. Kids.
Full speed ahead.
Hey, you don't find these often.
That's one scene on the TV. I found this information and still be present. Honestly, it made me very uncomfortable. We have several friends who I don't know what's not yours. But I never
Now!
So, I'm not against it. It just never crossed my mind. I have right wing. It's a lot to take. Sorry, my writing was probably messy, but it's kind of hard to learn.
Let me have a look.
Side of how long we discussed beforehand, but still. Did you guys give me your opinions? Thanks a lot for telling me all this. Now that you're wrong, I'd be divorcing so fast. No, that the both. So he cheated and now wants to be able to keep cheating by calling him Polly. Hello.
Let's take a look.
Don't have kids with this man for the love of God, and if you have any self-respect, you'll be serving him divorce papers as soon as possible. Your husband is a cheating ass. Swamp Cats, you got married under the assumption you would remain monogamous. He is trying to fundamentally change the nature of your relationship. If you are steps and conceiving and figure out your next steps, first step, not stay with someone who desires a relationship. You need to decide if it's something that you have not. First off, sorry to interrupt your comments. I am very thankful for that. It's a real mess hard. Situation. Decision. To answer some of your questions, the other girl wanted to meet him, but they never did.
Never in doubt.
Check for STDs though, and I'm clean. Yay. As for our polyamory
Name's Mandy. As you can see, I'm something of a drifter. You guys really saved me. Not bad for kids your age. Meeting you all makes me feel like my luck's finally starting to turn around.
I told him what you guys said, that turning it into polyamory was merely greenlighting the affair after the fact. That polyamory should be built on mutual trust and communication, which he already broke. That I didn't feel respected. It destroyed him. He said he already knew, deep down, but didn't want to admit, neither to me nor to himself. We both screamed and cried over it. He finally admitted he wanted to open marriage for selfish reasons. He's very smart. He confided the other girl, let me fully access his computer and phone, and now wants to go to counseling to repair a relationship and marriage. He has shown me a lot of affection and attention since then, although he admits himself it's sometimes out of guilt and not just out of pure love. And now I want to make it work too, but am I? Or is it a sunk cost fallacy? I don't know. The first session is in 2 months, the earliest we could get, and every day I change my mind. Literally yesterday I wanted to leave him, while today I think it's worth giving it a try. Because we've known each other for so long, we understand each other on a very deep level, share a lot of interests, and have already built so much together. He was there for me during hard parts of my life. He took responsibility for his actions and is really trying. So if I leave him, I'd have to start my life nearly from scratch. Find a new place to live. Go back into dating for the first time.
I need a break.
I don't want to lose everything. It sounds very hard and scary. Am I not too old for this? But at the same time, that's important to deny, isn't it? It doesn't matter if those years. It's not the same. Even if he gains my trust back, even if I forgive him, I'll never forgive him. I think he is genuinely remorseful, but isn't it too late for that?
Is something.
I'm too empathetic. Him being present now doesn't
Anything else?
Do I want to stay? Not because I still believe in this relationship, but because I don't have the strength to ask for
Something you want to make?
Because it's the easy choice. Some kind of codependency. I have no idea. I can picture both paths clearly, and it's tearing me apart. I am lost, maybe even more than I was when I wrote my previous post. I've lost sleep and appetite, and I'm not sure I enjoy anything in my life anymore. I booked an appointment with a psychologist, me alone, to help with this whole thing. I am sorry. At this moment, I know I'm the only one who can decide what's okay and comfortable for me or not. It's ultimately my choice, and my choice only. The emotional hell I'm going through just makes thinking about it.
Happy to make myself useful.
I'll go to both therapies and try to see what to do from here. I'll try to update, but it's probably going to take a while. I am sorry. I want to thank you again for your support, and I'm sending you guys a lot of love. Edit. A couple of infos I should have mentioned, but didn't, because putting all of that into writing without omitting something is much harder than I thought.
Happy to make myself useful.
Because once he told him he was married and wanted us both, she just ran away and broke up with him. There are times since then where my husband starts feeling sad or angry because of what's
Anything else? Thanks for stopping.
And for that, he's smart, at least sensible enough not to blame. What kind of marriage did we have before this crisis? It will sound so messy. It's my first and only romantic relationship. We were very close and basically grew as adults together. We could talk about anything and understand each other. We shared the same values and interests. What changed? I think we got into a routine and he got bored. During our argument, he said he was addicted to the attention the girl was giving him and that he felt I didn't show him I was in love with him enough anymore. I told him that even if it was true, he should have told me instead of having an affair. On one hand, I have my faults too, and I could accept this as one of them. On the other, I was taking care of him in the house while he was sick. I don't think he believes it. I don't think he needs it. But it makes me wonder whether I was actually a good wife for him, even though I am not responsible for his actions. Thanks again for your support, y'all. It's a lot to process, but it helps me so much. Relevant comments. OP on if she and her husband have kids and plans on getting counseling. OP, kids are off the table. If we do go into counseling, and it goes exceptionally well, maybe we'll talk about it. But for now, the distrust is already there. He says I love you, but I never know whether it's to regain my trust, whether he means it or not. Even if he does he love me or is it a lie he tells himself? If you choose to stay, don't be surprised if in a year you find him talking to someone again.
Hey, how's your
gear? They'll show remorse and swear they've changed. Meanwhile, they're smirking inside because
What's
they
next?
It's fair and think they can get away with it this time. Oh, thank you. It's obvious and well known. Once a cheater, always a cheater. But reading it helps me fight denial. I really need to break up with him. If not for myself, just to show him that actions
Hit me
have
up.
consequences. Final update. TLDR. We are divorcing. Hooray. TW.
Let's set sail.
Manipulation. Self-harm threats. Psychological abuse. Hey, I hope you're doing well. So my soon-to-be ex-husband had an emotional affair online and tried to make me green-lighted by asking for an open marriage, where we'd be allowed to have side adventures. I refused and his affair partner dumped him. He begged me to try to reconcile with him, to which I agreed, while I was actually trying to prepare my exit. Both went to individual therapy, still am. We separated temporarily 3 times, but every time I came back, it went terrible. He was desperate. He kept fighting.
Go!
Asking to touch him even though I established I didn't want to. Threatening to kill himself if we were divorced. This made me finally realize, along with my therapist's help, a lot of self-reflection and my exchanges of credit. It's an abusive relationship, which is an important part, actually the most important part of this update. Please look up definitions and examples, because I had no idea what my husband did in years, even before the affair, counted as such. In his case, it was psychological abuse, manipulation, gaslighting, guilt tripping, blame shifting, emotional blackmail, nothing aggressive for me, which turned me into a very submissive partner over the years, always catering to his needs while erasing lines. I rationalize everything. It happened slowly and gradually, and I was too naive to see it for what it was. It's emotionally fair and my marriage proposal was the natural connectivity of that. Of course, he and I tried to get away from him. I didn't do it at the time. Now that I was aware of it, I knew what he was doing. But fighting years of conditioning, even if you recognize it and succeed, is F***ing exhausting and disheartening. So, earlier today, I brought a friend home to assist me. We sat down, the three of us, and I told my husband we were over and I handed him the papers. It might sound dumb, but it's genuinely one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. Yet he agreed. He repeatedly asked me if I was sure. He reminded me of the family and letting me have our best memories together. Was it all for nothing? Apparently, yes. He was heartbroken. Really frustrated. But still, he agreed. He still had to go back to his parents for now. He still had to go through the procedure, separate our license, and decide what to do with the household. And he still wants us to go to marriage counseling. But right now,
Mana, gather round!
the last hours have been a mix of tears,
Chew on this!
sleep. And I have to thank you guys.
Let's make use of this.
So I first read a post with the link of all I need. Eventually, finally, get here. I don't think that happened. Thank you so much. Love you to you. Relevant comments. Fiona 7003. He reminded me of the family we were planning to have our best memories together. Was it all for nothing? Apparently, yes. He was heartbroken. That's a special kind of asshole. Was it all for nothing? After cheating on his partner, he sounds like an insufferable dickhead who useless. That's been the trigger. Oh me, I know the hypocrisy, the nerves of this man. The worst part is that he has very truly. I still think hell, a lot of people from our circle who are aware of what he did still think he's a good person who just lost himself for a while. I guess it's hard to accept that it was terrible people too. Any decision, full of criticism. You've been through a long, hard journey, and it will take a while yet, but you are investing in yourself and your health and happiness. Good for you. Continue self-care and practice safety and security. Slow down and heal so that you will be strong and ready to seek and recognize your love. Wishing you a glorious future. Yes. Thank you. I'll do my best. I like to think the hardest part is behind me, but this story taught me to expect the worst. Whatever it is, that one, it's me first. I deserve love and happiness. Like, of day 3, my previous post should have been final. I wish.
I think we're coming into some mist.
It's not as bad as the white sheet, but our visibility's pretty low.
After my soon-to-be ex-husband signed the divorce papers, like no contact, already sent my advice. He still sent me text messages and voice messages, and tried to call me multiple times.
Fire!
I sent them statements such as, I'm concerned that your mental health is deteriorating. I believe you need antidepressants to help you feel like yourself again. Your thought is understandable, but it probably makes you want to punish me by making you rational decisions.
Amazing!
I'm afraid you are surrounding yourself with questionable influences that have bad agendas. Please let me help you see it. The crisis was just as hard for him as it was for me. He told me he's escalated and I should protect myself. I should have listened immediately, but I didn't do it soon enough. Then he came to our street. He climbed uninvited and we didn't give him a second chance. He said he wanted to be there for me and so he insisted that he didn't deserve any of this. I started to feel distressed. He saw that I was unwell and wanted to comfort me, so he hugged me. But I didn't want to be touched. I'm pretty sure I told him no. I think I screamed no multiple times, but my memory is fuzzy. Either I misheard
Let's go!
or said no and he ignored it and didn't stop. I know it's just I love you. There was a severe panic attack. He called emergency services, telling them he was afraid of his levels in the sun. I had to ask the paramedics to meet me. After that, he told me he was there for me if I needed him.
Let's go ahead and grab that.
He contacted half of our social circle to inform them that I was unwell and needed some help.
Full speed ahead.
Our neighbors, my physician.
Just feel that wind.
I became paranoid, unsure who to trust it. Close friends, my therapist, and people here going to see things with me. My lawyer filed a
Full speed ahead!
evidence of a paranoid.
Let's make use of this.
Now that's a fine catch.
I'm still paying my decided it's financially very hard for me, but I do feel safer. I am feeling much better. Although I remain haunted by constant stress, sleep disorders, nightmares, nervous tics, random bursts of tears and rushes of anxiety.
Let's give it everything we've got.
Very well. Let us band together.
That's when I spend myself. I try to fight it, but I'm afraid of protection. Even as I'm starting to reach out. As much as I can.
Here's one with your name on it.
It's necessary.
New enemy! Incoming! How do you like that?
What do you expect me to do about it?
I'm sorry, this
How do you like that? Fire! Blast him!
Chew on this!
They will regret underestimating us.
Fire! Fire!
Fire the cannons!
The barrier's down! Get onto the island! We'll take this place back no matter what!
Those Grieger ain't getting their way on my watch!
As for my friends, sorry. My parents were very
Serves you right!
I knew you could do it, Karja!
Seems like a hard nut to crack. Yeah!
Since I was renovation, I guess I spent time. Sorry.
That's a win for us!
Aye. This ought to keep those Grieger in line a bit.
That went great!
They said I was being too harsh and I resolved perfectly innocent.
Oh, I didn't destroy all the ships, okay.
Here's where it's gone too far. I suggested that Pam might not be able to conceive because she was a horrible person and wouldn't be a good mother. My parents, a few family members, and of course Pam herself sent me a ton of texts after that call. They all demand that I should apologize to them, claiming that what I said was needless and unkind. I shouldn't kick people when they're already down, they say. The issue is that I can still clearly recall every event leading up to my wedding, and I harbor deep animosity toward Pam for her actions. I find it hard to feel bad about what I said. To put things in perspective, while I was organizing my wedding, Pam had already been married for 2 years. Prior to their marriage, she and her ex-husband had been dating for 3 years, and she had always understood his desire to live a childless life. When they began talking about their future after a year of dating, it was among the first things she brought up to
My
our
name is
parents.
Millette.
Even though I was in the room at the
I
time,
am
they
a
continued their
traveler
chat as usual,
and nothing
acting
else.
as though I wasn't there.
More pressingly,
Another
would
problem
you be
is
so
that,
kind
as a
to
child,
escort me
Pam
somewhere
and I
safe
have
at
never gotten
once?
along.
I can
She
ill
has always
afford
been the
to
beloved
fritter
daughter
my
of our
time
parents.
away in such a
When we
place
were
as
younger, we
this.
used to quarrel a lot,
Nah.
but eventually we just learned to ignore one another. She therefore knew for a fact that she wanted children in the future, even if she was telling our parents that her ex-boyfriend preferred a childless existence. In the end, they agreed to bring up the subject again when they were married, and she hoped that by then, he would have changed his mind. She tried to persuade him to have children, but he refused to change his views, and they started fighting a lot. She would frequently look very distraught at family gatherings and tell about how hard it was to stay with him all the time. Her decision to wed a man who had made it apparent that he didn't want children was, in my opinion, her fault. It was she who thought she could make him reconsider. However, she had no right to hold him responsible when she was unable to. Naturally, I kept all of this to myself since I knew it would just cause more problems. I tried to persuade him for a few months before my parents informed me that Pam had returned to live with them, permanently following a heated argument with her husband. They told me there was no way out of it at this point. My spouse and I had just begun making deposits for our wedding at this point. After almost 4 years of dating, we had been engaged for a few months. We had waited until we were both comfortable in our employment, even though we had been prepared for marriage for a while. My parents therefore told me that they wanted me to put off my wedding forever when they told me that Pam and her husband were going to divorce. They didn't want me to marry Pam at the same time she was divorcing in order to offend her. They said that Pam already had it difficult because she had to postpone her intentions to have a baby. They said that I should not forward with my wedding in order to spare her feelings because she truly wanted to become a mother. It was likely the most ridiculous and inconsiderate thing they had ever tried to get me to do. I informed them, of course, that I would not delay my wedding for Pam. Whether she liked it or not, I was going to marry. Since we were never close, I didn't care what she thought about my wedding. But my choice did not sit well with my parents. They were upset because I wasn't prepared to put their beloved daughter's sentiments ahead of my own wedding arrangements. They warned me that they wouldn't go if I didn't postpone the wedding. I knew my parents had a soft place for Pam, but I never imagined they would go to such lengths for her, so that was incredibly upsetting and devastating to me. Nevertheless, I accepted it and informed them that they may do as they pleased. Pam wasn't content, even though it should have been the end of it. She didn't like that I was getting married, so she made sure the rest of her family didn't come either. She initially tried to win people over by saying that it was rude of me to get married while she was going through such a difficult period. Although the majority expressed sympathy for me, they did not specifically state that they would not attend my wedding. She made the decision to step it up after realizing this. She began spreading stories about me because the truth wasn't contentious enough. Pam started claiming that I had been persuading her husband to divorce her because I was envious of her and couldn't bear the idea of her having a child before me. I had never been friends with her spouse, so the allegations were ridiculous. If he and I had ever gotten close, I genuinely doubt Pam would have married him at all. People began to believe her, though, for some reason. She even claimed that I had been bothering her by convincing her spouse that he would be happier without her and manipulating him to leave her. Pam claims that I was to blame for his lack of desire for children since I had reportedly persuaded him that having no children was the way to go for our generation. All of it was false. I assume she lied so firmly that others started to believe her, even though I hadn't really engaged with my brother-in-law when he was married to Pam. Many folks turned down my wedding invites. A couple of my supportive cousins and other family members told me about Pam's comments, so I already knew why. I wasn't shocked to learn that no one provided me with a detailed explanation for their refusal. Only a few relatives and a few individuals from my side of the family came to my wedding. Everyone else was either a friend or a coworker.
All right, let's do this.
The attendance was dreadfully poor. In the weeks before the wedding, I recall being really furious about all of this. Many individuals had already made up their minds, and some had even blocked me.
Time for a little break.
By talking to them and being honest. I didn't bother because it would have been my word against hers. Fortunately, my spouse, friends, and in-laws were there to support me on the wedding day. I barely noticed that so many of my family members weren't present because they made sure I had so much fun. I haven't forgiven Pam for what she did, though, simply because I had a good time on my wedding day. She was vengeful and vicious in what she did. She made sure I wasn't happy just because she didn't get her way, which was quite typical of her. She had been like ways since she was a child, but most people get over those habits, especially by the time they are in their late 20s. Regretfully, I am unable to say the same for her. I cut her and my parents off entirely after that incident, and my animosity toward them only deepened. I saw Pam's ex-husband for the first time since their divorce around a year later. One day while my husband and I were out to lunch, we noticed him eating with some of his coworkers. We weren't expecting the greet us, so it was a little awkward, but he approached our table, congratulated us on our wedding, and expressed regret for not being there. He clarified that it was because of my sister's predicament. Also courteous because he was chit-chatting, and my husband even made a joke about how he might as well have come because Pam didn't show up. Pam's ex-husband had appeared truly perplexed. At that point, we began discussing the events leading up to the wedding. He revealed how Pam had repeatedly postponed the mediation sessions and postponed the divorce by claiming she was too preoccupied in getting ready for my wedding. When her ex-husband learned she hadn't even gone, he became perplexed. Her sudden interest in my wedding had surprised him, but he had refrained from confronting her because he didn't want to accuse her of postponing the divorce. He just dealt with everything as calmly as he could. We discussed the facts after he gave us his version of events, which included Pam's failure to attend the wedding, for spreading false information about me, and her accusation that I was attempting to end their marriage. After expressing his shock that Pam would act in such a manner, he revealed the true cause of their split. It was a far deeper issue than a dispute over having kids. After months of arguments about whether or not to have children, her ex-husband finally began to take her point of view into consideration and was on the verge of changing his mind. She told him something that made all the difference the day he made the decision to talk to her about it. She appeared ecstatic when he informed her that he was at last prepared to think about being a parent. Then, in what she believed to be a jest, she said that he would have had to accept it sooner rather than later, even if he hadn't been prepared. She acknowledged that she had surreptitiously stopped taking the birth control pills without notifying him when he asked her to explain. She might have gotten pregnant if they had kept going that way, making plans for him to simply deal with it. He was unable to accept this perverse scheme. She had deceived us into believing that their disagreements were solely about having children, but in reality, their most recent dispute had been about the treachery. Pam made an effort to make it seem lighthearted, but it didn't make her actions any less serious. In essence, she was attempting to trick him into becoming pregnant so that he would be forced to accept the pregnancy at any time. My husband and I were more clearer on why she had behaved so erratically around the time of our wedding after that talk with her ex-husband. She was aware that she was to blame for her divorce. She could have kept it to herself and none of this would have occurred, even if she had taken the risky decision to stop taking the birth control. She may have even given birth to a child with her spouse, but she ruined everything for herself before venting her frustration on me. I became much more resentful of her after discovering this. I had the option of telling my parents and other family members the truth, but I decided against it. I had already severed my connections with people who hadn't been at my wedding by that point, and to be honest, I just wanted to get on with my life. I made the decision to remain silent and continue. But to be honest, I don't feel bad about what I said because I hate her so much. I genuinely think it's fortunate that she hasn't been able to have children because I don't think someone with her personality could be a decent mother. The fact that she and my parents only contacted me because I am pregnant and their wish to play happy family with my unborn child further bothers me. That simply will not occur. Regarding the notion of my child having two mothers, I concur with my in-laws and my spouse that it is not essential. People's reactions to my comment, especially those with whom I get along, are the only reason I'm even slightly unsure. So am I the jerk for suggesting that my sister might not make a good mother, which is why she hasn't been able to conceive. In response to inquiries, Pam has not remarried and, to the best of my knowledge, is not currently seeing anyone. Although I don't know much about her personal life, I've learned from friends and family that she is totally unmarried and that her primary goal at the moment is to have children. You can guess why she isn't interested in adopting a child or using a surrogate. In my opinion, it's because she feels that a child isn't truly her child unless you've given birth to it yourself. She has been trying for over 3 years, including when she tried to conceive with her spouse and when she used donors for IVF following the divorce. So far, nothing has worked for her. Most people would think about other choices by now, but she isn't interested, and that's her decision. The fact that she and my parents only tried to reconcile after I revealed my pregnancy is what truly seems odd. The remark about two mothers stuck with me. Additionally, you all observed that they made particular reference to the fact that this baby would be linked to her by blood. Technically speaking, my child would be her blood relative because she is my biological sister. However, bringing it up while trying to make amends is odd, and their actions simply gave off a disturbing, almost baby stealer atmosphere. I'm afraid she'll start projecting and acting like a mother if I do try to give her some contact with my child. I can't allow that to occur. Some of you have questioned why I haven't defended myself in front of the rest of the family. spoken out about the true cause of her divorce. In all honesty,
This might come in handy.
I became aware of
Look
my
at us go!
What a great find!
everything that transpired deeply moved me. And even though I wanted to speak out about the truth, I decided against it. I wanted to be left alone.
Ours now.
Even a few family members with whom I get along well said that I was a little callous when I told Pam that she couldn't have children. Although they don't expect me to apologize, they do believe it was a little too severe. These folks have always stood behind me, so that's why I'm worried. If they too think I was too severe, then maybe I should be worried. Update 1. I appreciate all of the comments left on my post. I appreciate your support, even though it seems like most of you believe I'm NTA. I will continue to ignore Pam and my parents, and I have made the decision not to apologize to them. They are obviously unhappy about this. On social media and in real life, they are acting like a victim and disparaging me in front of their family members once more. I already don't talk to those people, so I'm not bothered by it. What could possibly go wrong? That they will further isolate me. I made the decision to talk to my family members that support me yet disagree with me.
Okay, let's pick up the pace.
Almost everyone in the family is aware of what happened and what I said, and Pam and my parents have made a big issue out of it. I reached out to people who truly care about me since I won't engage with someone I don't get along with. I admitted to them that, in the heat of the moment, I had uttered those things. However, that doesn't change the fact that Pam's deliberate attempt to draw attention to herself during my wedding was much worse. For years, Pam has been mean and disrespectful to me, and I won't say I'm sorry for something that might even be true.
Something's over there!
Let's take a look.
At least not in the same manner that she did when she created rumors. Because of what she said, my family declined to go to my wedding. It's not the same thing because my viewpoint won't stop her from being pregnant. Those who are on my side are still supportive, and my relatives seem to understand this. I'm okay with them deciding not to talk about it anymore. All I want is for my pregnancy to be a joyful and healthy one. I hope this tension between Pam and my parents ends quickly. I don't want them to stretch this out because I might have to tell them some things they won't like. This is something I really don't want to deal with, especially now that I'm expecting it. Update 2. My parents have been playing a victim and informing everyone in the family about what I said for the past 2 weeks since I last spoke to them on the phone. They've been pleading with others to avoid me, to never communicate with me again, and even to cut me off their family
What's
members
that there?
They basically want me shunned by the entire family. My parents haven't been successful in their strategy though, because as I indicated, I was able to work things out with the people I care about. They obviously didn't like it, so they posted disparaging remarks about me on social media. I am aware that the posts are about me even if they haven't specifically mentioned me. They have been discussing a particular relative who has always tried to ruin lives, and always been jealous of Pam. That's why I allegedly made fun of her infertility, they say.
Mind taking the helm?
So at first I didn't care, but it really got to me when they recently posted that I was the one who destroyed Pam's marriage. I chose to reply since they were repeating the same falsehoods they had told me around the time of my wedding. I made contact with my former brother-in-law. Even if we don't communicate frequently, we are on speaking terms because we still greet one another on holidays and on our birthdays. I told him everything that had been going on and asked him to remind if I told the truth in public. I did what he told me to do. The drama has escalated since I wrote about Pam's actions and the true cause of their divorce. Although I haven't spoken to anyone directly, family members have been calling, texting, and emailing me to ask whether it's true, to ask me to remove the post, and even to accuse me of lying about Pam once more. None of them have received a response from me. My parents and Pam, on the other hand, have remained remarkably silent, which suggests that they have little to defend themselves. They'll find words though, I'm sure. Even after all of this, it's disheartening that no one in the family has bothered to apologize to me, but it's okay since it's exactly what I anticipated. I believe I've been successful in exposing Pam for who she truly is, which was my major objective. I'm just going to relax and observe what happens next. Update 3. My parents finally contacted me a few days after my last post, stating that they were prepared to apologize.
Let's set sail!
I consented to have my post removed. The rest of the family hasn't expressed regret to me, but they seem to have contacted my parents and Pam to criticize their actions. They told my parents that it was unfair to portray me negatively when Pam was ultimately to blame for the divorce. My relationships with my parents have suffered greatly as a result of their years of deceiving the family. It's amazing how fast certain family members went from detesting me to betraying Pam. However, as I already stated, I don't hold it in high regard for those who assumed that I was the cause of Pam's marital issues. They're now equally eager to assume that she was at fault from the beginning. They still refuse to say sorry, and the majority of them have ceased getting in touch with me. No one is requesting me to remove the post, and no one is interested in knowing if I was speaking the truth. I replied to Pam and my parents that I would wait to remove the post until I felt like it. I don't care about their apologies anymore. I responded to their email correspondence and subsequently blocked them. They haven't made an attempt to get in touch with me since.
Right,
At this point, I made the decision to remove the post. Not for them, but rather because I don't want my social media accounts to be overflowing with posts by unimportant people. Retaliation isn't beneficial, and as I mentioned, I want a pleasant and healthy pregnancy journey. Furthermore, I believe that's sufficient punishment for Pam and my parents because they are who they are. I have family and friends who truly care about me, and my spouse and I are content. I really only need that. It doesn't really matter what my sister and parents are doing these days. I hope they understand after everything that has transpired that I don't want to interact with them ever again. That's all I have to say, and considering everything that has happened, I doubt they will get in touch anytime soon. I'm grateful to everyone who has helped me, answered my messages, and given me guidance. It is really important. Now to the next story. Find the jerk for refusing to confess just to take communion at my brother's wedding. Original post, I, 31F, have 3 siblings, 40F, 38F, 27F, and we have a good relationship despite the age gaps between some of us. My older siblings are both married and so am I. The wedding in question is my younger brother's. My younger brother Luke is engaged to his GF of the year Emma, 28F. She's nice I guess, but we have never really clicked and are just polite to each other. Something evil is that we are all Catholic, but not really hardcore ones, and some of us are even lapsed. I do believe this whole situation started just when I met her for the first time. I look younger than Luke, and it has always been a sibling joke that I'm truly the baby of the family. Most people that meet us assume he is older than me, but nobody has had issues with it until Emma. The day I met her, she kind of scoffed when I said I was happy the baby had a proper girlfriend. She has this weird thing about being the eldest in her family and refused to believe I was older than her until I showed her my ID. She has been hot and cold with me since then, often infantilizing me or trying to have a sort of boss attitude. I just let her be and usually ignore her since I have no time to try and beg for her friendship, so I'm just polite and simple. Always include her when planning stuff, but don't really make an effort. The family knows about it and just shrugged into different personalities. Then the wedding planning started. Emma decided I could not be at a wedding party since I was not married in the church. Fine by me. Then she requested that the immediate family submit their dress plans so she could check it as the wedding dress code. Fine, whatever. You see where this is going, I hope. You'll see I have not gone to confession or have communion in more than a decade. If I go to a mass for whatever reason, I am respectful and simply sit or stay standing during the rites I don't participate in. Well, this is not good enough for her, and she says I need to take communion during their wedding. I said no, and she has not taken it well. For the most part, I avoid her, as I said before, but this time I wasn't going to say yes or risk an issue. I told her that for taking communion one needs to go to confession, and I didn't want to. She said all the immediate family is doing it, and it will look bad if I don't. I told her sure, fine, then I'll just go have communion in front of everybody, but won't do confession. She said that this was going to be my attitude. I was uninvited from the wedding because I clearly wanted to ruin the day for her. I turned to my brother and told him thanks, gave him a thumbs up and went home. My family understood my reasoning and said they respect everybody's choices, but I shouldn't do something the same. I told them I really don't want to go to the wedding anymore, and I don't owe any explanations on my life. I only called my grandma because she heard what happened and asked me not to disrespect the church by doing the communion without confession. I promised I wouldn't do it, and she is fine with that.
Smooth and steady sailing.
My brother wanted to compromise, so I replied by asking if the other lapsed people are being made.
Never know what'll come in handy.
He said no because it was only me.
How do you like that?
I find it funny since all the others are clearly older than her, and she just behaves like this with me and the youngsters. ATM. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter. You should alert the priest to her behavior. He will ensure that she stops with her actions.
Okay,
she cannot
let's
make
go.
rules that do not exist in the church. I would say to him and let her deal with the consequences of her own actions. OOP. I actually considered it, but I don't think I will since my grandma might be doing it herself. She has lapsed herself, but didn't want me to be disrespectful. But she knows the priest that will be officiating and is not really happy with all the shit show. Why Emma is pushing this? I honestly believe it's more her trying to have authority over me than her religious views. My oldest brother finds it ridiculous, but said he would not intervene unless I ask him to, which I appreciate cause despite Luke acting like a dipshit, I don't want more drama. Commenter. Just consider that the less you do, the longer this drama will go on. Maybe getting more people involved would actually shut her behavior down for good. OP, I don't want to give her the attention she craves. My grandma said she will handle it with the priest and I will simply sit down. My whole family and most of the common friends know already. Luke and Emma themselves told them and shot themselves. Demand an apology in order to go. I already told my parents I'm not coming no matter what. They are clearly not pleased with how she spoke to me, but even more displeased with my brother, but we agreed on not intervening more. If he wants to marry her, it's his decision. He's an adult and needs no permission.
Just about
But what
does
he would lose has been made clear to me. Commenter, I would let Grandma handle it. She sounds feisty. How old is she? My grandpa used to say she was like a firecracker.
Notebook entry complete.
She's 81 and
Let me
has
know
been
when you
lapsed
find
for like
something
25
new.
years, I think. She still has friends in the church community and all, but they respect her decision not to participate in the rites anymore. Commenter, yeah, I would definitely let her handle it then. Please keep us updated. I really want to know if the wedding even happens. OP, I am conflicted because I do love Luke very much, but I dislike him right now. I know Grandma is mixed with just. Also now I am sure Emma doesn't even know why Grandma is lapsed and might be in for a shock. Commenter, can't you just go get a blessing? I'm an atheist but my parents are hardcore Catholics and my dad became a deacon last year. They asked us, me and my siblings, to go get blessings as a compromise as none of us are religious. I still declined personally but my understanding is that going to get a blessing is common for non-confirmed and considered an act of participation. If you're just lapsed, rather than actively rejectful, then that seems like a perfect compromise, and one where you can pretend to be going for communion before crossing your arms before the priest, or whichever signal said church uses. OP, my issue is not about the blessing, it's that she singles me out and wants to have some sort of authority above me. A bunch of my family are lapsed but she has not made a big deal over it except of me. Her stupid argument falls apart because my oldest brother is also lapsed, but she doesn't seem to care or maybe she has not realized it. She has not mentioned anything to him, but is making a huge deal because I don't participate. One of the top comments, lucky effective 1564, NTA who died and made Emma Pope. OOP. LOL I will share this particular one with my grandma next time we talk. She is gonna love it. Update post 1. Things have moved but I wouldn't call any of this a positive progress. I would like to clear something I kept seeing in the comments. I won't request a special blessing or go in the queue for communion. It isn't about the blessing or the compromise but the singling me out. I often just stay quiet or take a general family blessing if we go to weddings, etc. I have no issue with compromises. I have an issue with Emma and her ridiculousness. I don't know why she has this thing with me. I do look young but not like a teen or a child, obviously. She has 2 younger sisters and is very authoritative with them. I have witnesses her being very my way more than I would with younger people, so she has issues for sure. The confrontation from the last post was on Tuesday, and today we had lunch at my grandma's. I think you should also know that my brothers have a tricky relationship, as in they are not as close with each other as they are with other siblings. My older brother Robert is very open and says that he has never been a fan of Emma, but he didn't think he should have to intervene because Luke is an adult and capable of navigating relationships. All this is going to be relevant, I promise. We visit Grandma a lot since she lives by herself, and we truly enjoy her company. Today we were all there because she is home with this mom.
All right, let's go.
That was more like
Wow, talk about breathtaking.
Emma continued with her rant about me being a disrespectful person and that she was asking the bare minimum. My grandma asked her why she had no issue with her not taking the cake. Emma said that she was her elder and for sure her reasons were that to have parents in my case. She also repeated that she was asking this of all the siblings.
Whoa, amazing!
This is where everything happened. I mentioned in the comments that Robert is also lapsed and was already exhausted by the situation. He asked her what issues with him not taking the union.
Let's make use of this.
She didn't have a proper answer. Robert then asked her if she even knew what did Grandma.
Chew on this!
She shook her head and staring angrily at her and said nothing. Robert explained to him that was the reason Grandma was. When Robert was a teen, day, I was so worried about her grandparents' reaction since they were very heavy in the Catholic Church.
Remember seeing this terrain on a map. Let's check it out.
That priest of her church. That priest was super old school and told her that Robert was committing sins. He was going to hell. He needed to find his way. Grandma didn't take that so well and simply stopped going to church and started spending that time with her grandchildren. Over the years, she started getting into but she decided she was going to take this influence. She respects parts of the church but can't fully reconcile. Emma was a bit confused since Robert is married to a woman. He explained he is bisexual and ended up with a woman just as he could have been with a man. He also commented they are not married in the church, but that didn't matter to her. Like it mattered when it came to me. He asked her directly what was her problem with me. Long story short, she said I was rude since the beginning and kept treating Luke wrong. Oh, and I also was very snarky about looking younger than her. Crickets. She is a beautiful, successful woman, so I still don't understand her obsession, but it seems like she wants people to see I respect her and what she says. I just started laughing. She started crying and saying I turned my grandma against her. My grandma told her to stop blaming people for her being a negative person, and she was always going to side with me over her. Luke got upset at that and asked her why she was not supporting him, and she simply said she doesn't support him being a lapdog for a crazy woman. Laura said nothing got truly resolved. I was kind of invited again, but declined going. Grandma is undecided if she even wants to go at all. My older siblings told Luke they will go to the ceremony if he seeks couples therapy or at least therapy. My parents are having headaches and now dislike Emma so much they can't hide it. Oh. And yes, Grandma spoke with the priest and he wants them to do extra premarital counseling or he won't officiate. I hope they don't get married, but he is old enough to derail his life if he wants. I thank you for letting me vent at my grandma on the phone joke. Update 2. My brother has gone too far and I decided to be done with him. He made our grandma cry and I think permanently damaged a lot of his relationships. I want to mention some of my cousins and other family members thought I was just stubborn and creating drama, but now there is no longer my side or Emma's side. Maybe he always felt this way, but the issue he has with Robert is absolutely ridiculous. He was so upset with what Grandma said about him being Emma's lapdog that he called me to speak about it. I was obviously not present for the conversation, but Grandma told me what happened and Luke confirmed it. He told her that it was unfair of me to ask Robert for help since he was her favorite grandchild and would get her to side with me no matter how wrong I was. He also told her that many of the cousins believed this and that it was so obvious since she even left her religion for him. He claimed the other LGBTQ plus members of the family, most were not even born when Robert came out, by the way.